the St. George's podcast. I'm David Edgerton. I'm the rector at St. George Maple Ridge.
And I'm Roxanne Brundle. I'm the associate pastor here.
And this month, as our special guest, we have Archbishop Melissa Skelton. Thank you so much for joining us, Archbishop.
Delighted to do this.
So as we record, it's the end of February, and you're here in Vancouver. And when the podcast is released, it's March, and you'll be on the other side. So just to set that context for those of you listening, to know that we're in 1 month and then listening in another. And so forgive us if we get confused as to what day it is.
I am really interested, Melissa, in how you got first to the place of being a priest, and then to the place of being a bishop, and then to the place of being an archbishop. And more interested in how God led you in that direction.
Yeah. So I actually feel this about all my many vocations, both in the church and outside the church. So in my experience, God leads through enticing. And so I felt enticed early in my life into the study of English literature, because from my perspective, it was always about describing the human condition and searching for the threads of meaning in human life. So I felt led there. I felt led into family life, and I felt led into being the parent of small children and a wife. So a wife and a mother, and that was I was led into that through wanting to experience the depth of what it meant to be a human being and a woman. And I felt led actually into other careers I've had, mostly out of, it's that same theme, curiosity about living a human life and looking for meaning there. So the church and being led to priesthood was very much a part of that. I was in a seminary community at the time, and didn't really didn't see myself as headed in that direction, because at that time, not many women were being led in that direction. But the faculty had other ideas. And it came to my attention that they were wondering why I wasn't actually enrolled in school, and I kind of filed that away. And it was in the context of being in a small African-American community as one of the few white people that kind of came to the fore. And so I did discernment for priesthood in an African-American community. And that's who sent me to seminary. And for me, it was just a continuation of this very same interest, and that I believe was put in my heart early in my life, and then the whole thing of priest, bishop, and archbishop. Well, you know, I would just say all of the bishop and archbishop stuff was the conspiring together of other people. It wasn't anything I really thought I should be doing, and so many people encouraged me along the way that I took a risk and began offering myself in that way, and then just got elected over and over. So, and this is the case for many women. And this is something I've learned in trying to support women as they are invited, and they kind of think that they might be able to put themselves forward for roles with greater and greater scope. They often don't feel self-authorized in the same way that some men do. And therefore, men supporters and women supporters and other supporters are really key in terms of their own discernment processes, as they should be, I think.
Melissa, I got to tell you that when I was a teenager, I was at Christ Church Cathedral when the very first female priest was ordained at Christ Church Cathedral. I think it was Elizabeth Alley. Yes. And I remember back then thinking, wow, especially when I saw a number of priests stand up and say that they would not recognize her as a priest. Yes. And I remember the Archbishop of the time saying, you've got 10 years to figure it out, and then you need to. And so I'm just wondering how you found the barriers for women over the last few years? Have they really opened up? Have you found problems, or is it very different than it was a number of years ago?
Well, I would just say it's less frontal. Um, uh, and this is not to say it's only in some places, like it was only in my process, the Episcopal process in the U.S., which one of the processes I went through was overtly sexist. And it was even hard for me to give them that feedback, and they sought after it for quite a while. And I thought, I just don't know if I'm going to go there. And they persisted, and I did give the feedback, and as did some of the other women who were in the election. I just would say, this is still a place where we have to do work. It doesn't happen often, but it still does happen to me that in a meeting, even in my role, which is a role of positional power, that sometimes something will be offered, and it's not until another person says it, who is not a woman, that people like, oh, interesting idea. And or it's repeated almost verbatim what was said by another person. I mean, my words by another person. It doesn't happen often. It hasn't happened often in the Anglican Church of Canada, but it does happen. So I think, and as we look around and see just how many women are at certain leadership roles, just gets smaller and smaller numbers. Thankfully, the House of Bishops in Canada has increased dramatically in the number of women there. And we don't have as many women cathedral deans. We don't have as many women rectors of large parishes. Not that that's the only good thing to do, but there's still lots of work to do. And I think our incoming bishop, Bishop John Stevens, will be working more, in just as concentrated a way. Interestingly enough, we had the Leading Women Conference, which was a collaboration between Anglican Church of Canada, mostly through myself and a couple of other female priests, and an effort that had been going on a long time in the Episcopal Church. It's the first time we'd ever done it in Canada.
Wow.
And the Canadians who attended were just bowled over with what it meant to bring women only together, and to talk about their experiences as a way of kind of elevating consciousness and encouraging one another to give it a try, to put themselves out there, to be willing to do that.
It's said historically that there were only two roles for women in the Anglican Church, which was either supreme governor or member of congregation. So
yes,
I remember hearing that in my seminary training and being struck by the irony that women bishops in England at the time were I don't think yet coming in to be, but yet the supreme governor was the Queen.
Yes.
And
right.
Going back to Elizabeth I and all of that stuff. So times have moved on. What would you say has been your highlights, or what have been your highlights in these few years?
My first response is every single moment in a parish. Every darn one of them, because I'm a congregational maniac, and so visiting in parishes, people said, "Oh my gosh, aren't you tired of cutting cakes?" I thought, never have I been weary of cutting a cake and watching the face of a child as they watch me cut a cake. Never have I been weary of meeting with leadership. Never have I been weary of working with whoever is assigned to be the bishop's chaplain, as that person says, "Okay, what do I do? Tell me what to do." Or as I've looked into the face of diversity in our congregations, or as we've talked about the difficulties with money, every moment has been like a highlight, honestly. And then there are these other ones that the role has privileged me to participate in. So the TRC in Ottawa, that was my first immersion into the whole issue of residential schools. And I read on the plane coming home, but to see that many Indigenous people and their supporters gathered in one place, marching together, and listening and going to ceremony. It was just amazing. And kind of akin to it are my time in the Philippines, and going to the little tiny village of Butbut, which is in an area of Kalinga in the Philippines. And as we drive up, and we've driven up in a scary way to this mountaintop village, and and I'm just trying not to look out the window to see the sheer cliff going down. And we drive up, and we all get out of the car, and this is with folks from the diocese, and behold, the entire village has turned out to greet us, and they've been there for an hour and a half waiting for us. And the minute we get out, two things happen. We're offered a drink of water, which signifies when we drink it, which we drank, that we are under the protection of that village, because tribal conflict is not unknown in those places. And the other thing is they burst into song. The image of community and hospitality, and it just continued from there. And so those are my highlights.
And then, of course, when you're thinking of the highlights, also wondering of some of the challenges, some of the perhaps struggles of being in the role.
Yeah, so here it is. I was asked this by the Bishop's Friends event, where Bishop John Stevens and I did dialogue back and forth, and so I paused, and this is really the truth. Okay. It's again an every moment thing. It is being in the present moment with whatever is right before me, and not be sitting kind of debriefing what just happened or happened a week ago, or some way in which I felt like I messed up, or oh, I just wish I could, that, or trying to think about what's happening next. So it's like it's the challenge of prayer. I see it as the challenge of prayerfulness, which is, how do you stay attentive no matter what meeting it is, how many you've had that day, who the person is, your level of discomfort or joy. How do you just stay right in the present moment in what is a fairly relentless barrage, procession, a presentation of the myriad of things that you encounter as a bishop. That's it. Every day.
I recognize in myself I can struggle to pay attention to what I'm doing, because I'm always thinking about what's next, because I'm future. So is there a type indicator for a bishop?
That would be so hard to see, but so I'm teaching this as one component of a million components during my pastoral theology, pastoral care course at Vancouver School of Theology. I'm the person who gets to teach it this time. 22 students from around the world. I mean, truly, all virtual. And we did a segment. We did a segment on culture. We did a segment on MBTI. And for those who don't know it, intuitive thinking types are more representative in the places where they've done research, which is really corporations, but more leaders tend to gravitate in those kind of corners. These are on the corners on the type. So I fall right into that. And so just like you, David, intuition is a strong piece for me, which is kind of wanting to finish people's sentences and wanting to get to where they're going in the conversation without just staying in the present moment. So I do have to work on that. Luckily, because I'm an extrovert, and that seems to be in the Episcopal Church, and I would say in the Anglican Church of Canada, a smaller number of people, the desire to engage and interact with what is outside myself, that has been a strength. And so I've relied on that in many ways, though that tendency decreases as one gains in years, because you're trying to be all of who you might be, which is also an attention to the interior. So I don't, as I look at the House of Bishops, I think, what could these types be? I just don't know. I would say it probably is people more with intuition than a preference for sensing, for kind of staying in the current moment, for sure. there are probably a fair number of folks who like closure, who are, or who, if they don't like it, they have to learn to function that way. So yeah, that's about all the perception. I would say there are not as many extroverts as there are introverts, as usual.
And that's true in the whole of the Anglican Church generally, isn't it?
I think that's right. I think that's right.
As we had to go through COVID, that nobody has a rule book for and nobody has a plan, but you got a chance to see the church as a whole in the diocese pivot and change. And it would be great to hear some of the things you saw, some of the things that you might want to share with us.
Yeah. So I'll start with me. What I saw was, oh my gosh, I get to do a piece of work that I'm actually equipped to do. Getting it organized, having a way we'll do it for good or for ill, where people, that whole planning thing. And so for me, I thought, wow, I get to do something I'm actually suited to, which I don't as much get to do in this role. And so, and then to see, so what I learned about the parishes is they actually needed guidelines. Some of our clergy could have come up with those themselves, but in this kind of shifting sands, that they needed some specific things, even if they didn't like them, they needed some certainty about what's the process by which we open, and then they needed that in order for many, to begin to wrap their mind around both the technological challenge, which is a technical one, and the more adaptive challenge, which is, what does this mean for us in terms of who we're reaching, what might be sustaining and nurturing during this time for parishioners and others. So I've seen some parishes really, and ones that would never have thought of themselves as being either good at the technical or this broader challenge, really come to the fore and discover some things about themselves that they didn't know they had in them, either as Anglicans or as really parish churches with limited resources. So just to see the creativity of what some have done in terms of liturgy and the quality of that, to see and to hear about churches that are really got onto this. Oh, it's the social times that people actually are hungering for. Let's make those substantial. Those who got onto, oh my gosh, we can offer formation to a broader group of people than we'd ever imagined, and to kind of capitalize on that. So it's been inspiring, and it's also told us, if we ever doubted the value of some of the things we offer, that we're not doubting that anymore, that community formation, prayer is important, even if we have to sacrifice the physical in-person part of it.
Did you see anything, really different, really outside the box that any of the churches are doing? I mean, I assume most are doing online services or doing.
They're doing online services. They're doing online formation. They're doing online coffee hour and social time. They're doing small group work online. I wouldn't call those outside the box. They certainly are outside the box from a way you've previously thought you could do it.
Right.
I guess there's one parish, and this is a parish that's in transition, that's decided in the transition, before they have a rector, to completely reconfigure their space so that they can accommodate a dual, physically in person and a virtual congregation simultaneously. And that's probably the most dramatic. It's not just technological upgrade, it's completely reconfiguring their space. Now, I haven't been there, and so I'm hoping and praying they're doing a good job of that. And that's I'd say the most dramatic, where there's an investment in infrastructure like that, as in the physical reconfiguration of space, that I've heard about. Some of our friends, Rabbi Dan, who is a compatriot of mine, I've always urged people, go to his website. So Rabbi Dan did a whole series of cooking classes And Rabbi Dan has a wonderful way of weaving into everyday life, of kind of having his finger on the thing that people are actually doing, and then offering a resource and then weaving it into the spirituality of being a Jewish person. And I sort of like, please go there, learn from this guy. I don't know how many have, but he's a master. I would say, I'll be his apprentice anytime on this stuff.
I know, David, that you've done a bunch of stuff too at St. George.
Yes,
And
I should be pointing to David.
Don't point to me. But I think what's interesting is just seeing how something around confidence that I've observed, and I don't know what you think of this, but just that sometimes as the Anglican Church in Canada and in this part of Canada, we can lack confidence in what we're doing, and almost sometimes a sense of people saying, well, we just need to, it's not going to be very good because we're only Anglicans. And I know that we've had conversations before around what does excellence look like.
Yes.
And I just wonder, how can we move away from that place of saying, well, we're just Anglicans, we just, we're just trying our best to keep our building afloat, to a place of saying, well, why can't we do these creative things like Rabbi Dan's doing? Why can't we find ways to engage with culture? So what would you say to people who might be listening in parishes now, who are thinking, well, how can we kind of do some of this stuff?
Yeah. So I love that you asked that, because we need to. And so there are all kinds of, at all levels of our diocese, you could intervene into this. And some of it's offering a training thing. But honestly, I think a cohort of clergy and laity who want to make this their mission of listening more carefully to culture, actually mining some of the resources outside of our tradition and doing our own version of that. I think that would be the most effective thing to do. So I charge you with this, David. I think it's sort of like-minded people, where it doesn't feel like it's kind of being managed from the Synod office or anything, that just start setting a direction in that. There were some studies in a book that I brought to the diocese that the Lilly Foundation did about what it's like particularly when clergy come together, or I'd say clergy and staff. It doesn't just need to be clergy, and who set an agenda for themselves as a cohort, that this is what we're going to do. Or is it a cohort that we need to support each other spiritually in this time? Or is it that we want to set our agenda to be about learning from culture and go pushing beyond the small group, the kinds of things that we are typically doing right now, to really change it up. And they found that those clergy were more deeply satisfied, and marvelous things got done by that kind of structure that wasn't kind of micromanaged or just managed from a Synod office kind of perspective. I'd love to be a part of it. Diocese of Olympia is doing a lot of stuff on race in this way. A lot of stuff on race, yeah.
I had some questions about your retirement, but I hear that it's not really about retirement, that there's something else happening. So first of all, I just want to say, Melissa, that I think God placed you in our diocese at a time such as this, so that you could do what you could do as the person that you are created to be. And so thank you first on behalf of everybody. Thank you. But now God knows there is something else for you. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing next?
Yeah, so I've done consultation and training for such a long time, and I will continue with that. Mostly, at the diocesan level, and so I'm involved in the School for Parish Development, which is the College for Congregational Development in the U.S., and the retooling of the curriculum there with other people to bring it up to date, to add voices that perhaps weren't represented in the earlier program, and to launch I'm kind of the launch person for a couple of American new beginnings, Diocese of Atlanta, and at some point the Diocese of Michigan, with colleagues that I've known for forever. And then I'm doing some just consultation work with potentially in the area of mediation with just some thorny kinds of things in different dioceses. And thorny. But I'm happy to play my part, whatever I can do. And then I've been appointed or invited to be an assisting bishop in the Diocese of Olympia, which is a wonderful opportunity to support my friend there, Bishop Greg Rickel, but to do it in small ways. I would love to be involved in their rekindling, their fostering relationship with Indigenous people in Washington, but that, I would never presume to be able to walk into that unless that was okay to do. So those things, and then I want to do some art. I want to do. I'm not an artist. But I love it. So I'm just, so Roxanne, this is one of those things. It's sort of like, what am I being enticed into here? And maybe it's into experiences of rank incompetence. That would be good for me. I've dabbled in it in some of my time, and it does feel a lot like rank incompetence, but I'm drawn to it, and so I will see where that will lead.
Are we talking watercolor? Are we talking pottery? Are we talking?
We're talking letterpress printing, because I really love the press, and we're talking things related to press. It would be screen print or lithograph, something like that. At least that's where I think it is. I've taken one painting course, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life, and it was good for me. And yeah, so we'll see. I'll probably do a drawing course, and I'm doing a little writing, but yeah, so we'll see what happens.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So we'll look out for a range of merchandise, because that's all the rage in some circles is church match. Have you heard this? So just when you said screen printing, you could be screen printing T-shirts.
I could.
Yeah.
I love cottage industries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Melissa, I think it's important for people to remember that people may be retiring, but God is not done with them.
No.
And I think that you're an amazing example of that. It's just a new phase, a new areas of enticement.
That's right.
And then sometimes we do our best work in our 60s, 70s, or 80s.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we forget that. Yes.
No, I'm really hoping. I just said, when the COVID hit, I said, my goal is to retire alive.
Yes.
Now I'm even more ambitious, and then I'm just like 4 days away. I'm going to make it.
I'm curious. Here's a curious question.
Oh, good.
In this is questions I should have asked you in the last 5 years and didn't. And so here we go. Why is it that in the States we have the College for Congregational Development, and in Canada we have the School for Parish Development? What's the logic behind the different names?
I was the director / coordinator of the College for Bishops at General Theological Seminary, which was the training for new bishops in the Episcopal Church and beyond. And so, I just thought, let's use that word. So when I got to Olympia and created, drawing on many thinkers, many others that had come before, I always have to say that I thought, let's use the College for Congregational Development. Then when it came to, when I was invited to come offer it in Canada, there was a thing like, we don't like this. Let's change it to another name. And so the beautiful word school, which is kind of basic, was the word chosen. And strangely enough, in the Diocese of Atlanta, their bishop there, Bishop Rob, who is an African-American man, very with it kind of guy, he said he heard about our name and he said, "Oh, I love school." I thought, well, I don't know that you're going to be authorized to use that. But, so it's just funny how it was a local adaptation that the name changed here so that it would be, not, the important thing was that the Canadian trainers and others felt like, gosh, it sounds like more like us, not like our US counterparts.
So as you are moving from one diocese to another, are there any things that you'd like to leave us with, maybe some encouragements or hopes for us who are left behind in the diocese?
Y'all come. Uh, well, I guess it's so interesting. We had our staff goodbye. It was a Zoom lunch, Indian food, wonderful.
Mm.
And the beloved Randy Murray had written something that kind of was not just about me, but about the diocese. And it was very touching. And it was something I'd learned during my time here, that I didn't realize how wounded and how hurt and kind of how deflated the diocese was when I came on. And the legacy of the splits and just all the feelings of disappointment and alienation, people to people, that was felt. And so my time here has been about, consciously or unconsciously, Randy said, you got us busy. You got us very busy. Because while it's important to debrief things, this is my view, that need healing, absolutely, it's important to also have a way that you're going forward. So I feel like, and it's gradually, but I do feel like there's more of a sense of confidence. So I think for me, I just hope that confidence is one we keep building on, because 7 years about this work is a short time.
Mhm.
And the other thing, and David, you've already hit on it, is how do we claim the creativity that is God's?
Mhm.
Because we're not, God, and we've taken this and accepted this gift from indigenous people, the ready attribution to call God creator. We should internalize that and have the confidence to create anew. And certainly within our tradition, I'm a lover of Anglicanism. And of course, if you attended that party, that there's a shampoo called Anglican anyway, because I used to work in the shampoo category. But we've got to claim,
Mhm.
and particularly in this part of the world where it's possible to claim it, because it feels, I said about the West Coast, it feels like mountains are still erupting here, coming into be. It feels like we're still in the wonderful, beautiful cauldron of creation on the West Coast. And so I just feel like we should take the risk, have the confidence to create and recreate. And for me, that's for here in the Diocese of New West, in the province, and also Diocese of Olympia. It's that same, maybe different churches, but it partakes of that same broth that the West Coast potentially can nurture us with, so we can do more than we are doing. And there's just so many people for whom Episcopal Church or Anglican Church is new information that it even exists.
Just as we're drawing to a close, Roxanne, any final questions?
No, I just think I'm just grateful to meet you and be able to spend some time with you just before you go. And I hope you come and visit us as congregations all through the diocese over the next couple of years.
Well, as soon as the border opens, I'll be back.
Yes.
I'm actually have a couple of things I'm leaving in the Senate office. Like, I can't take this across the border. They won't let me. I'll come pick it up later. And I just want to give you a quote. So this is, I've packed up all my books, but this is, I love the poet William Stafford, and it's a book. It was given to me by my husband, and it's called The Sound of the Axe: Aphorisms and Poems by William Stafford. So he has a lot of zingers, one-liners. And the last one in the book is this one. My belief is what my whole life says. My belief is what my whole life says. So I give you that wonderful quote that's been my a bit of my mantra in these last days, which are very emotional, and just to let my life speak what is at the bedrock of my belief. And my belief, right at the center of my belief is that Jesus, who loses life to find life. My belief is what my whole life says.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for those who haven't heard the podcast before, you can subscribe on your favorite podcasting app, wherever you're listening to now. You can also find it on the St. George's website. We're back on the first Wednesday of every month with a new podcast. If you haven't heard any of our previous episodes, then you can also go back and listen to those. So whatever you're doing, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.